Alright guys, welcome into Formula 1 news. Max Verstappen may have effectively won the Drivers' World Championship, but Red Bull are certainly not going to win as it stands. The constructors, McLaren and Ferrari, both overtaking them in recent rounds, and the drama continues around potential cheating accusations going down. Red Bull seemingly revealed over the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend they thought there was something seriously dodgy going on by McLaren and potentially other teams as well. After the weekend concludes, after Max effectively wraps this whole thing up, Christian Horner still implies that Red Bull think that these other teams might have been doing something rather suspect indeed. Is it actually true? Many don't seem to believe that Red Bull have any idea what they're talking about on this issue, but very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. First of all, we've got plenty of driver stuff to get into. Max, of course, was loving life after this past weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix, a challenging one for him, but, well, a very successful answer that he posed to that challenge. But Liam Lawson was also having a challenging Grand Prix, and he did pretty well himself. It wasn't flawless, precisely, but as he said, he nearly crashed about 10 times. Never happened, finished the race, got a decent result at the end of the day, and now Jos Verstappen even is talking about the potential partner to Max at Red Bull next season. We know that Red Bull effectively have turned down the possibility of getting Carlos Sainz in. They could have got him, right, but he's going to go to Williams. There was a rumour, obviously, with Christian Horner spotted in the Williams hospitality during the Brazilian Grand Prix, that maybe he was having a convo either with James Vowles about the availability of Franco Colapinto, or, potentially, the availability of Sainz. Now, Sainz isn't available, but could you say to Williams, look, Colapinto's your man, keep him in Albon, we'll take Sainz off your hands, no problem at all. Obviously, there would have to be some funds exchanged in that situation, but it is something interesting to think about. Now, we know that Jos doesn't get along with Carlos Sainz Sr. It's not something that Red Bull have really wanted to renew as a partnership, but it would be a strong one. I think there's no doubt about that. So that's what Jos says, that if there's someone who is competitive and pushes Max forward a bit, that's actually better, right? Because look, Max is still a competitive animal. He wants to deliver as best as he possibly can every single weekend. But if he has a teammate who isn't a challenge to, and it's very difficult to find anyone on the planet who's going to be a challenge to Max in the Red Bull car, but just someone who's a bit better, right? Because, you know, the amount of pictures that I've seen over the last few days of, you know, pictures of Max's car and the two McLarens next to him, or the two Ferraris, or the two Mercedes, or whatever, right? Like, it's pretty common that Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari are fighting with both hands, whereas Red Bull are fighting with one hand tied behind their back. And, you know, that is a predicament. And obviously, Max, it doesn't help him either, because he never has the potential advantage on strategy that he could deploy with another car in play, because, you know, Perez is usually out of the equation over the last few rounds. So Jos says, look, it's better for the team if they have someone more competitive, but also that person can push Max a bit more, make him more competitive than he usually might be, and also just help the team in general. So even Jos is basically saying, yeah, if we can replace Perez with someone better who's going to challenge Max a bit more, even, you know, Max's father is saying, yeah, I'd like someone who's a bit more of a challenge to Max, because that's going to be better overall, and it's not like he expects anyone to beat Max in the same car at Red Bull. Of course, the debate kind of has been, will he stay at Red Bull? Because it's not like Red Bull have seemingly massively turned things around. They definitely got it right in Brazil. Like, Max's car was very fast. I think in the sprint we saw that. It wasn't, look, Max obviously masterclass on the Sunday, but we saw in the sprint that he was probably the fastest car on the track. The fact that he was able to hold pace with the guys in front and nearly even find himself in a position to win that sprint, potentially, if things had gone a different way. It clearly showed that maybe the Red Bull in Max's hands was the fastest car at Brazil, and in the wet we certainly saw that play out. The McLaren was quick, but it had so much downforce that it wasn't really a threat in the straight line, which was a problem when it comes to overtaking, certainly in the wet. So, yeah, it's not like Red Bull have fixed everything and there's no problems. It's not like Max goes into Las Vegas as, you know, the heavy favourite to win the Grand Prix again, but it is certainly better than it's looked for a little while. Now, the partner that Max will get, the most likely option is, maybe it's Perez, but I don't know if I really buy that anymore, although part of me still thinks, well, we've talked about Perez leaving for years and it's never happened, so, you know, why is it going to happen now? But Lawson seems to be the favourite. Again, Red Bull are seeing Lawson as effectively their preferred option over Yuki, which I feel like is, it seems a bit unfair to me, but I think that's just what it is at the moment, for as far as Yuki Tsunoda is concerned. But the other big updates of today was what's going on at Kick Sauber. Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber, as for some reason they're still going by, and that is the confirmation that both of their drivers will depart the team for next season. I think we kind of saw this coming. Certainly Zhou was not going to be staying on the team any longer. And look, he's had a good 3 years now, right, in Formula 1. At the start of his career in F1, I was genuinely pretty impressed by Zhou. I thought he showed good pace back in 2022. Not the case last year, really, and this year has basically been a disaster. Now, he's not had all the upgrades at times that Bottas has had, but man, this guy Zhou is putting on a P20 clinic for the ages. P20, half a second off Bottas. P20, 8/10 off Bottas. P20, 1.4 seconds off Bottas. Like, this guy's done it all over the last few rounds, and he's become very anonymous because you know that he's a guaranteed Q1 exit. And it's a shame in some capacity because I think, you know, obviously as the first Chinese driver in Formula 1, great story, and of course for Audi certainly coming in, there was some theories as to, well, Audi, like China's a massively important market for Audi, so there was potentially something in that. But look, as Zhou says, I've been immensely proud to represent my country as the first ever Chinese Formula 1 driver, but like, he's obviously not getting an opportunity. There's some rumours, of course, he's discussing options to stay in the paddock. I think he did say that he would take maybe a reserve option somewhere, but look, the reality is he showed promise in his first year, kind of. He was never that quick. The last couple of years, he's kind of shown that, you know, in my opinion, not quite Formula 1 level. So, no surprise here really from either party. The big surprise to me, if you'd have told me this at the start of the most recent season, I guess, would have been the fact that Bottas is gone. Now, yeah, so Valtteri Bottas not going to be on the grid for next season as the starting driver. Interesting that Bottas says that we decided to part ways, which kind of implies that Bottas himself was not exactly convinced that staying was the way to go, which, to be fair, I totally get. I mean, it's not like Sauber necessarily wanted to keep him around. They're bringing in Nico Hülkenberg. He's going to be joining the Audi project as well. Did they want to sign two veteran drivers who can do a job, both good quality pace, you know, racecraft good, but maybe not absolutely top notch, but still veteran guys that can bring opinions and insight and development direction to a team? That is one idea, but also given the success of Behrman, of Colapinto, and potentially of Antonelli and others on the grid next season, there's a real push right now in F1 towards more younger talent, and that's what we are seeing here instead. And if you'd have asked me a little while ago, what should they have done with that final seat, I would have said, look, probably keep Bottas. But the more that the team has gone on and not made any progress, I'm not really sure it matters for Valtteri. Like, I think Valtteri, he's driven very well this year in a car that's been atrocious, and, you know, in terms of championship position, I think he's still dead last, even though he nearly got kind of close to a better placement in Brazil because of all the DNFs and stuff that happened. But it's like he's been outperforming Zhou just substantially every single weekend. He's been sometimes even getting a Q2 appearance, which seems to be an absolute miracle in that car, and being somewhat competitive in the Grand Prix at times in a car that's like a second and a half a lap off the pace of the leaders. So Bottas, I think, has done quite a decent job this year for his stock as a driver, and next year, if hypothetically Sauber still produce a pretty terrible car, it's not like he has much to gain from another year in that car. I mean, look, if he comes in and he was to beat Hülkenberg next season in the car, then I guess that's a bit of a statement. But driving around at the back of the grid never really helps your case anyway. So I feel like Bottas's chances of getting back on the grid for, let's say, 26 are probably the same now as they would be if he did drive for another year at a team that's not performing. So I think it's still okay for Bottas. I would expect to see him potentially back at some point. I think that he's actually proven to be really quite impressive this year, even on a team that was, you know, is just really floundering. Now, of course, Audi, they do need to, you know, find a future direction here, and of course, Bortoleto's going to be the man. Bonotto, who's kind of heading the project over there now in many respects, he's looking at the future and he's saying, okay, we had to basically choose some young talent here. We're trying to build the project towards Audi in 2026 and beyond, and they said, look, we had to choose whether to put Bortoleto in the car in 25 or 26, but he was definitely the focal point for them. And as we just saw mentioned here by Chris Mendler, McLaren said that, yeah, we've got Lando and Oscar, that's not changing, so there was no reason to stand in the way of Gabriel Bortoleto, who is going to be their new driver alongside Nico Hülkenberg. Very exciting to see a Brazilian, first of all, back onto the Formula 1 grid. It's been quite a while, I think, since Felipe Massa, was it? The last time that there was a Brazilian on the grid, yeah, I think that's here, 2017 it's been, the last time we had a Brazilian on the grid, back in 2017. Now, Bortoleto won Formula 3 last year, he's currently leading Formula 2. again, his F2 success this year, there's been a bit of luck involved. I mean, in Monza, he won the race after, was it a red flag or definitely a safety car that helped? I think he went from last to first in F2 at around Monza. But basically all of it was getting very lucky with the safety car timing. Now, and it's funny because if that hadn't happened, Bortoleto wouldn't have been leading the Formula 2 Championship. He may not have been in this conversation. So it's just sometimes how it goes. You get one bit of good fortune, it puts you in the conversation, and all of a sudden you're getting the drive. And I think the reason why Bortoleto's getting the drive in large part is because of what Colapinto's done. Because Colapinto, his Formula 2 campaign was nothing particularly special. And I'm not sure he's going to be special in Formula 1. His first races are very good. The last couple have been more of a struggle. I'm still pretty high on Colapinto and his ability to improve. But, I'm not convinced that Colapinto's going to be the next generational talent in the same way that I'm not convinced that about Bortoleto by any means. But Colapinto has absolutely proven that he can hold his own against veteran drivers. And I think this is the reason why I might not be convinced by Colapinto yet or by Bortoleto for sure, but I'm still in agreement that making these decisions is the right call, because these guys will do just as well as, I would say, the likes of, I don't want to say Kevin Magnussen precisely because he's done well over the last couple of rounds, but just a veteran driver who's been around the block. Like Behrman, for example, has come into Haas, and he's pretty much been the same level or better than Hülkenberg already. So, and Hülkenberg's great, as we know. So if Behrman can do that, there's certainly other junior rookie drivers that can do something similar, and maybe Bortoleto's the man for that. Of course, the thing is for Bortoleto, in the same way that with Colapinto, there were rumours that maybe he was in the conversation to go to Sauber to keep his drive on the grid for next season. Does Colapinto actually want to go there? Does it hurt his stock to take the drive over there after what could be a decent end to the season with Williams? Maybe on some level, depending on how good their car is, and it doesn't look great for it to get much better really anytime soon. And Bortoleto, look, it's obviously, you always take a Formula 1 seat. If you're offered a Formula 1 seat, you take the Formula 1 seat. But of course he has something to prove, and doing so against Nico Hülkenberg is going to be far from an easy challenge at all. We've got to close the loop though on this by talking about what's next for Valtteri Bottas, because the rumour is he is going to rejoin Mercedes AMG F1 Formula 1 team, whatever they actually called, and Bottas back in the Mercedes. An exciting prospect here. The rumour is, of course, not as a driver, but as a reserve driver effectively for the team. This has been touted now for some time, that Bottas staying as part of that Mercedes organisation. And there is some merit in that, right? You stay around Mercedes, you stay around Toto Wolff. Maybe if the Russell-Antonelli dynamic doesn't work and you can't get Verstappen, maybe you even think about something for Bottas there if the time potentially calls. Like, let's say, I think Antonelli will not be terrible, but let's say hypothetically Russell just falls off big time and Antonelli is like cooking him somehow as the young new superstar of the lineup, and Antonelli's having a Hamilton 2007 season. You might say, all right, the Russell-Antonelli dynamic isn't the best here. Maybe they're getting into some drama on track. We'll bring Bottas in as a, guaranteed good number 2 driver. And that could happen for Russell or for Antonelli. It's obviously very unlikely, that scenario that I've just mentioned, but there is a world in which Bottas could again be useful to Mercedes on some level as a starting driver. More than likely, just keeping him around the paddock in that kind of camp definitely opens the door, I think, for Bottas to make a return in 2026 when there are further driver changes, because I think there will be teams out there that need a guy like Bottas. I think there are teams out there right now that probably do need a guy like Bottas, but they're not getting him, and I think that this option is probably a sensible one for Bottas. But if it doesn't work out for him in 26, it might be time to call it a day in F1 or go elsewhere. But I think he's been pretty impressive over the last couple of seasons, all things considered. But let's talk about the drama, shall we? Because this weekend, during the Brazilian Grand Prix, there was speculation all over the shop about a new way to cheat. And what I find incredible at F1, I think I mentioned it the other day, there are practically infinite ways you could potentially cheat in this sport, and Red Bull have apparently found another one. The funny thing about this article is that after AMUS mentioned this, what they also said was that Red Bull, I think it was at least reported by them or elsewhere, that the reason why Red Bull have raised this as a concern is that they themselves were doing it, or at least experimenting with it, a couple of years ago, and now lots of the guys that were involved in the Red Bull projects, they've now moved on to other teams, McLaren, Aston Martin, etc, etc. So the rumour was that Red Bull were effectively talking to the FIA to say, hey, we kind of tried this before it was technically illegal, now it is, so can you have a look to make sure they're not doing it, because they're, you know, using our way to cheat against us type thing. So, look, no one knows if anyone's actually doing this right, but the rumour is that McLaren and maybe others are putting small amounts of water in their tyres. So, when you pressurise the tyres, if there's possibly a way to put a bit of water into the tyre as well, then things get kind of interesting because, well, if that was even possible, apparently it will have a rather substantial impact. That's what Giuliano Chiesa was talking about yesterday, and saying that according to some technology, they say, Red Bull say, just 1 milliliter of water. Think how little a milliliter is of water. Apparently just that inside a tyre, which I guess would be pretty undetectable, maybe. But again, the FIA say that there's been no proof of any tampering with the cars or the tyres by any teams in any sort of a suspicious way this season. So there isn't really any evidence to back up this claim. But look, it's nonetheless interesting. Red Bull say that a single milliliter can lower the temperature values of a tyre by 10 degrees. So we're talking like the core temp. We know that McLaren have had excellent tyre degradation towards the end of stints in recent times. To be honest, pretty similar to what last year's RB19 did, the car that never seemed to degrade its tyres at all. Which is interesting in hindsight, because that was also kind of true at the start of the season. There's just been speculation, why was Red Bull so good at that last year and not really the same level this year? Of course, there was speculation about the asymmetric braking, because that would also help keep temperatures and keep just, braking symmetry and therefore efficiency under braking and therefore tyre wear in a much better window. But maybe there's this option as well, that someone was not using water to lower the temperature. Now, is that believable, I guess is the question for you, because there was this discussion here from Patrick, who is an ex-F1 aero engineer, and he says, no, that's not possible. And, obviously there's talk about how that would potentially work in terms of the physics. Does it increase the relative humidity? Does that therefore increase the thermal capacitance? Look, I don't know what I'm talking about here. I'm just reading big words on the screen. But Patrick then says, sure, but it would not be possible to have that level of effect. So the theory is that even if McLaren were doing this, which, he seems to think they probably weren't, then it wouldn't have anywhere near that type of impact. But it's interesting exactly what's happening. Now, the big debate came about this comment from Horner, because Horner was asked about this. Obviously, Max won the Grand Prix very impressively, basically has sewn up the championship, and he was asked, okay, with all that's happened, do you still think these other teams are using this, water in the tyres to allow for better cooling on longer distances? And he says no comment. So no comment is as good as basically yes, right? Like, yes, we put it in. If they didn't, of course, raise a question about this, Horner wouldn't have to say anything, but that's as good as an admission that Red Bull have at least asked the question about whether other teams are doing stuff. So, what do you guys think about this in the comment section below? It's, again, another fascinating cheating saga here in the world of Formula 1, and, well, that's not going to go away anytime soon at all. But very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. Just thought this is kind of interesting. We could have had a very different season had Ferrari not bottled their upgrades around Spain. If the Ferrari was good for that 4 to 5 race stint, it could have been Leclerc this year in the position to do the championship challenging. And over the last 3 rounds on the triple header, Max and Leclerc scored the most points of anyone, equaling on 62 over all of those 3 rounds. Very impressive from both of these gentlemen, as always. Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.